Molly, where's my sandwich?
Aiden yelled from the TV room. "I'm coming!"
And don't forget the pickles on mine!
yelled Ethan. I grabbed everything quickly, packed it on the tray, and hustled to the TV room. My brothers snatched the tray and began to devour their meal. Not even so much as a thank you, but I guess I was accustomed to it by now. Just then, Aiden's phone rang.
Hello, good day, Mr. Peterson. How can I help you?
He listened for a bit before responding.
Yes, he's here. I'll put it on loudspeaker. Beat it, you brat.
Ethan snarled as he grabbed me roughly by the arm, threw me out of the room, and closed the door. I rubbed my arm and opened the door slightly, kneeled, and placed my ear by the opening. Mr. Peterson told my brothers that he wanted 25 passports and ID cards in 3 days. He was willing to pay them $25,000. And then suddenly the door opened, and what happened next changed my life forever. Hi, I'm Molly. Before I continue my crazy story, tap that thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to smash that notification bell so you'll know when more stories like mine are posted. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of my backstory. Mom married Dad, who had twin boys. Mom was an only child, and Dad had an older sister, Stephanie. My brothers and I were never really close, as they're 9 years older than me. Dad came from a wealthy family, and he also had his own medical practice. A few days after my 16th birthday, my parents were headed to the airport to attend a medical conference out of state. Unfortunately, they got into a fatal car accident. My brothers got custody over me. That was about 6 months ago. Since then, my life has been a series of unfortunate events.
You look exhausted.
Ember, my best friend, remarked when I met her that morning for a daily walk to school. I stifled a yawn. Aiden and Ethan had a few friends over last night. I was up until 4 a.m. putting the house back together.
You're not their maid, you know. You should stand up for yourself.
It's 2 against 1. The odds aren't exactly in my favor. Just as we entered the school gates, the bell rang and we hurried for our last class. That afternoon, I walked home from school alone since Ember had swimming practice. Upon entering the house, I heard the phone ringing. Aiden? Ethan? I yelled as I entered. The ringing stopped. Well, that's strange, I muttered when I didn't receive a reply. My brothers were usually at home around this time. The phone rang again. I wasn't allowed to answer the phone, but what if something happened to my brothers? Should I answer it or let it ring? We didn't have an answering machine, so maybe I should. This ping pong match lasted for a few seconds, and I finally put the receiver to my ear. Hello?
Hi, Molly.
Mr. Holdings, the family lawyer, greeted me.
How have you been?
I'm okay. Would you like to leave a message for Ethan or Aiden?
Actually, I'm glad I got you. I've been wanting to speak with you about your parents' will.
A few days after my parents died, Aiden and Ethan spoke to the lawyer. They never gave me any information from the meeting. Okay, what is it?
Have you been receiving the stipend your parents left for you monthly?
Stipend? I raised an eyebrow. Mr. Holdings went on to explain that my parents left me a monthly stipend of $2,500 per month and a stipend for my brothers or guardian, which was about $5,000 to ensure I was well taken care of. Since my parents died, I haven't received as much as a new t-shirt from my brothers. I haven't received anything.
Then I would assume they didn't tell you that your parents left you a house and $2 million.
No, they didn't. I was shocked. How could my brothers keep this type of information from me?
Molly, are you sure you're okay? Your Aunt Stephanie would be happy to take you if your brothers aren't taking care of you.
I hesitated for a moment. Aiden and Ethan told me stories about how Aunt Stephanie treated them in the past. The nickname they had for her was Cruella. Maybe they were lying about her. If I didn't live with them, then they wouldn't get the stipend. I threw caution to the wind and told Mr. Holdings about everything that had happened over the past 6 months. Mr. Holdings told me that he would contact me with my new living arrangements, but I needed to give him some time. I told him that I wasn't allowed to use the phone. He said he would try and find a way to get a message to me. Before hanging up, I told him to please not tell my brothers about our conversation. He assured me that our conversation was confidential. After chatting with Mr. Holdings, I felt lighter and somewhat relieved. Maybe I can have a brighter future than the one I envisioned. Over the next 3 weeks, I didn't hear anything from Mr. Holdings. I just can't take this anymore, I muttered to myself one evening while preparing sandwiches for my brothers. By hook or by crook, I have to find a way out of here.
Molly, where's my sandwich?
Aiden yelled from the TV room. I'm coming,
And don't forget the pickles on mine!
yelled Ethan. I grabbed everything quickly, packed it on the tray, and hustled to the TV room. My brothers snatched the tray and began to devour their meal. Not even so much as a thank you, but I guess I was accustomed to it by now. Just then, Aiden's phone rang.
Hello, good day, Mr. Peterson. How can I help you?
He listened for a bit before responding.
Yes, he's here. I'll put it on loudspeaker.
Beat it, you brat!
Ethan snarled as he grabbed me roughly by the arm, threw me out of the room, and closed the door. I rubbed my arm and opened the door slightly, kneeled, and placed my ear by the opening. Mr. Peterson told my brothers that he wanted 25 passports and ID cards in 3 days. He was willing to pay them $25,000. Suddenly, the door opened, and startled, I fell into the room.
What the heck are you doing?
Ethan growled. I was looking for my contact lens. After you threw me out of the room, it fell out, you idiot. I snapped. Ethan raised his hand to slap me, but Aiden held his hand back.
We don't have time for this. Deal with her when we come back. We have things to take care of.
Ethan shoved me against the wall and pointed his finger in my face.
Clean the kitchen before we come back.
I cleaned the kitchen already.
No, you haven't.
Ethan looked at me smugly before turning away and heading towards the kitchen. I heard glass shattering and things being thrown against the wall. Aiden and I walked to the kitchen. By the time we got there, it was totally trashed.
Now,
Ethan adjusted his clothes.
clean it up.
He turned to Aiden.
Let's go.
As soon as my brothers left, I sprinted to the basement. I had a hunch. Dad always had spare keys lying around just in case. I needed to get the office open. I figured that's where they were doing their illegal business since it was the only locked door in the house and I never cleaned that room. I found the small box with the keys and headed to the office. If I was able to get the door open, I would be able to get a passport and an ID card. I was always told that I looked over 18 anyway, so I didn't doubt that my charade would work. The box held about 20 keys, and I swore under my breath as I tried key after key, but none opened the door. I was about to give up when I pushed the key in and I heard the lock open. I sighed in relief. I stepped into the office and closed the door behind me. Everything in the office was set up and it looked easy enough to create the items that I needed. I got to work quickly. As soon as I finished creating my passport and ID card, I called the police and told them about my brother's illegal business. I also told them that my brothers had locked me in a room and I needed help to escape. The officer on the other end said that a car was on their way to me. I smiled slyly as I hung up the phone. I ran to my room and I packed a bag quickly and returned to the office and headed for Dad's safe. I needed to get enough money to survive until I could find a way to get to Mr. Holding's office. Luckily for me, my brothers did not change the code for the safe. As soon as it was open, I began to pile money into my bag. While doing this, I heard a frosty voice behind me and my eyes widened.
Are you stealing from us, little sister?
I spun around and there stood Ethan by the door. I quickly zipped up my bag and placed it on my back before standing to face him.
If I were you, I would put it back.
Ethan stepped into the room and walked menacingly towards me.
Or would you prefer we speak with the police?
I'm not stealing from anyone. Mr. Holdings told me about the money Mom and Dad left me and the stipend they're giving you to take care of me. So please, Ethan, call the police. I bet they would just love to know how you've been treating me over the past 6 months and not giving me my stipend that my parents left for me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be leaving now.
Molly?
Aiden's voice came from behind Ethan. I pushed past Ethan and tried to exit the office, but Aiden wouldn't let me pass.
Look, we're sorry about the way we treated you. We all suffered tremendous loss and we didn't handle the situation as we should have. I know it would take some time for us to make it up to you, but please forgive us and allow us to. Family should stick together. Isn't that what your mom always used to say?
The sincerity in Aiden's voice made me reconsider if I was doing the right thing. He was right. They'd also lost their dad, and the past 6 months have been hard. I sighed heavily.
So, what do you say? Truce?
Aiden extended his hand. A small smile curved my lips. I took up his hand and shook it. And then suddenly Aiden jerked my hand, twisted it behind my back, and pinned me to the wall.
You trust way too easily, Molly. That's no way to live your life. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck with us for the next 2 years.
The doorbell rang and everyone froze. When no one responded, the person on the other side identified himself as a police officer.
Take her to the basement and make sure she stays there.
Eden instructed Ethan. Ethan placed his hand over my mouth as he dragged me, kicking and screaming, to the basement, while Eden answered the front door. Ethan threw open the basement door and threw me inside and closed the door behind us. I searched for anything that would help me get the upper hand on Ethan, who was taller and stronger than I was. My eyes came across a hockey stick in the corner. I glanced at Ethan, who may have guessed what I was planning to do. He lunged at me, but I quickly sidestepped him and went for the hockey stick. My fingers grazed the hockey stick, but I wasn't able to hold on as Ethan grabbed hold of my hair and pulled me back. I struggled to get free, my hands groping aimlessly around the basement for anything I could use. My hands held onto something cold and hard. It was a wrench. I swung it at Ethan, but he dodged it and threw me to the ground. His knees on either side of my chest, he snatched the wrench from my grasp. Hunched over me, his face contorted in anger. He pressed it against my neck. I used my hands to try and push him off, but he was too strong. My air supply was being cut off. I was on the verge of passing out when the basement door flew open.
Hands in the air or I'll shoot.
Ethan dropped the wrench and stood up. I rubbed my neck weakly.
Oh, Molly!
I heard Aunt Stephanie's voice. The officer handcuffed Ethan, and Aunt Stephanie helped me to get to my feet and hugged me.
Are you okay?
I nodded with tears in my eyes.
Let's get you out of here.
We walked to the living room where another officer, Mr. Holdings, and Aiden were standing.
Molly, all the arrangements have been made and you'll be staying with your aunt from now on.
Ethan laughed devilishly.
You think your Aunt Stephanie is better than we are? Come on, let's get you to the station.
The officer pulled Ethan towards the door. Ethan looked over his shoulder.
You're making a big mistake.
Are you ready to go, sweetie?
Auntie Stephanie looked at me. I nodded, and we left. The next few months with Auntie Stephanie was a breath of fresh air. We went shopping, stayed up late watching movies, and I even got a cell phone and a laptop. Life was great. The only thing was that I had to switch schools, so I couldn't see Ember as much as I wanted to, but we chatted every night before going to bed. One night, while I was about to step into the kitchen, I heard Aunt Stephanie chatting with someone on the phone. I assumed it was Mr. Holdings since she asked if she could get a larger stipend since taking care of a teenage girl was costly. Hurt by what I just heard, I went into my room and packed a bag. I can't believe I fell for it. All she's interested in is the money. It was never about me. I still had the money, the passport, and the fake ID from all of those months ago. I waited until my aunt was sleeping that night before I ran away. I was able to get a decent apartment and a part-time job after school, which kept me afloat until my 18th birthday. When my birthday finally came around, I contacted Mr. Holdings and I was given access to my inheritance. I refused to let anyone get close to me because I don't know if they like me or the money that I have. Maybe this will change in the future, but until then, it's important for me to keep my peace.
Professor McGuire said that if I aced this last test, I would be at the top of the class for this semester.
Derek, my older brother, mentioned before shoveling food into his mouth. I looked over at my brother with a critical eye. His left eye always had a slight twitch whenever he was lying. I wondered what he was hiding from Mom and Dad. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door.
Keisha, are you expecting someone?
Mom looked at me over her glasses.
You know I don't like it when company disturbs dinner.
I rolled my eyes. I'm not expecting anyone, Mom.
Sorry, Mom, it's me.
Derek wiped his mouth and stood up.
Craig had to drop off some papers for me that Professor McGuire needs.
Mom nodded, and Derek went to answer the door. A few minutes later, Derek returned. So, what type of papers did Craig need to drop off at this hour? I smirked in Derek's direction.
Nothing that concerns a high school student.
Derek responded, annoyed. We'll see about that, I mumbled, as I gulped down the last of my juice.
Who wants dessert?
Dad chimed in.
I made my famous apple pie. Me!
Derek and I shouted together. We looked at each other before we doubled over in laughter. As Dad and Derek went to the kitchen to organize dessert, I excused myself from the table and told Mom I needed to use the bathroom. I snuck into Derek's room. My eyes widened when I realized what Craig dropped off for him. Hi, my name is Keisha. Like and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to tap that notification bell. If you do, you may get your favorite dessert tonight. As my parents and I walked onto Derek's college campus, I couldn't help but smile. hoping that by coming unannounced, we would catch him in something unethical. You see, Derek and I were complete opposites. He has always been my parents' perfect child. Straight A's, always does what he's told, and just an all-around goody two-shoes. He also had a gorgeous girlfriend, Haley, who was actually pretty cool to hang with. I, on the other hand, would question everything, which usually got me into trouble with teachers, had my own sense of fashion, and well, pretty much did what I wanted. I don't even think my parents expected me to go to college. When we got to his dorm room, one of his roommates opened the door.
Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Corrington. How are you?
Luke smiled.
Hi, Luke.
Dad gave him a firm handshake.
Is Derek around?
The guys looked at each other before Luke replied.
He had to do a philosophy makeup exam with Professor McGuire.
I raised my eyebrows suspiciously. Classes on a Saturday?
It's a special class.
Luke shot a look at me. Mom, are you guys really believing the story? These guys can't lie to save their lives.
Oh, Kesha, stop it.
Dad looked at me sternly.
Well, let him know that we dropped by.
Mom said as she handed them a basket of baked goods.
See, I told you we should have called first.
Mom whispered to Dad as they left the room. My parents may have bought that lame excuse, but I didn't. Whatever Derek is hiding, I am going to find out what it is. Bye, guys. Luke smiled at me.
Maybe if you weren't such a problematic child, your parents may believe you once in a while.
Luke closed the door on my face. How dare he? I fumed as I ran to catch up with my parents. I'll find out what Derek is up to. As we were exiting the campus, Derek called out behind us.
Mom, Dad, wait up.
As he approached us, I asked, "How was your exam with Professor McGuire?"
What?
A confused look washed over Derek's face.
Don't bombard Derek with your silly questions.
Mom said as she kissed him on the cheek.
Let's get some lunch.
Dad patted Derek's back fondly.
After that exam, you must have worked up an appetite.
The three of them walked up front having their own conversation as though I didn't exist. You would think that I'd be used to it by now, but it still makes my blood boil. My parents always hung on to every word that Derek spoke, but never listened to anything I had to say. We had lunch and I used my phone as I appeared to be invisible to my family. After lunch, Mom asked Derek if he was coming to Thanksgiving dinner, and he said yes. We said our goodbyes and we headed home.
Professor McGuire said that if I aced this last test, I would be at the top of the class for this semester.
Derek, my older brother, mentioned before shoveling food into his mouth. I looked over at my brother with a critical eye. His left eye always had a slight twitch whenever he was lying. I wondered what he was hiding from Mom and Dad. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door.
Keisha, are you expecting someone?
Mom looked at me over her glasses.
You know I don't like it when company disturbs dinner.
I rolled my eyes. I'm not expecting anyone, Mom.
Sorry, Mom, it's me.
Derek wiped his mouth and stood up.
Craig had to drop off some papers for me that Professor McGuire needs.
Mom nodded, and Derek went to answer the door. A few minutes later, Derek returned. So, what type of papers did Craig need to drop off at this hour? I smirked in Derek's direction.
Nothing that concerns a high school student.
Derek responded, annoyed. We'll see about that, I mumbled, as I gulped down the last of my juice.
Who wants dessert?
Dad chimed in.
I made my famous apple pie.
Me!
Derek and I shouted together. We looked at each other before we doubled over in laughter. As Dad and Derek went to the kitchen to organize dessert, I excused myself from the table and told Mom I needed to use the bathroom. I snuck into Derek's room. My eyes widened when I realized what Craig dropped off for him. On Derek's bed was a large envelope of transcripts. As I flipped through them, I heard the door close behind me. I spun around and there stood Derek. He rushed over and snatched the papers from my hand. Why do you have fake transcripts? I looked at Derek as I tapped my foot lightly.
Look, it's nothing you need to worry about, okay?
I wonder if Mom and Dad need to be worried. He froze.
You can't tell Mom and Dad.
I laughed. Can't? Oh, I'm telling. I walked towards the bedroom door, but Derek blocked me. He explained that he dropped out of college about a year ago, and he has been living off the checks Mom and Dad had been sending him for tuition. His friend's uncle already has a job lined up for him after college. That's why he needed the transcripts.
I'm tired of being the perfect son. I'm tired of being perfect for the both of us. Do you know how frustrating that is? I want to live my own life. You know I can't tell Mom about this. She already has a heart complication, and I don't want to make it worse.
You feel frustrated? Do you know how it feels to constantly live in your shadow, never being good enough for Mom or Dad? The only time they ever see me is when I do something they disapprove of. I'm sorry that you feel that you need to be perfect, bro, but I guess you'll have to be the perfect child for a bit longer. I want 15% of your paycheck, Or I'm not only telling Mom, but I'll be paying a visit to your boss to let him know that you never graduated from college. Before Derek could respond, I walked out of his room with a smirk on my face. Derek and I went back to the table and pretended that nothing happened between us. Over the next few months, I helped Derek with his charade of pretending to be in college. On the day of his graduation, I faked being sick so we could all miss his graduation service. I was kept overnight for observation, and Derek spent the night with me and told our parents to go home and get some rest. Once Derek officially graduated, he started his job, and I collected 15% of his paycheck every month. Things were going great until the following Thanksgiving. Mom, Dad, Derek, and I were once again sitting around the table for Thanksgiving dinner when there was a knock on the door. I opened the door, and there stood Auntie Patricia. "Hey y'all, it's Auntie Pat," I yelled to the others in the dining room as I hugged her. Auntie Pat was the black sheep of the family. Whether she was invited or not, she showed up and usually brought some type of drama along the way.
Keisha, how are you, baby girl? I hope you are getting ready for college.
"I'm doing the best that I can, Auntie," I smiled and followed her to the dining room where she greeted everyone.
Pat, you aren't welcome here.
Mom said dryly.
Last time I checked, our parents also left me the house, Miriam. I'm here, get over it.
"She's family, and I think she should be allowed to stay." I folded my arms.
When you have your own house, you can have her by you. But until then, she isn't allowed here no matter if half the house is technically hers.
Honey,
Dad looked embarrassed.
it's Thanksgiving. You can make an exception.
Fine, if she stays, then I go.
Auntie Pat sat by the table and began to pile food on a plate. Mom pushed her chair back and walked out of the room.
It's nice to see you, Pat.
Dad smiled before he followed Mom out of the room. Derek and I stayed with Aunt Pat as we updated her on what was going on in our lives. Somewhere along the line, Derek let it slip that he and Haley eloped. "Mom is going to have a fit when she hears this," I gasped. "Oh, Mom," I said playfully.
Kesha, you know how Mom is, and I don't want you to upset her given her heart condition and all.
"Especially with everything else that you've been hiding." I batted my eyes at Derek.
Who told you your mom had a heart problem?
Auntie Pat asked with a raised eyebrow.
And why have you been hiding Derek?
Derek, consumed by the new information about Mom, ignored Auntie Pat's last question.
Mom did. When she went to hospital during my piano recital when I was 12.
Derek looked at me, then at Auntie Pat.
Boy, the doctor told your mother that she was having an anxiety attack.
Auntie Pat laughed.
It's just like Miriam to manipulate people to get them to do what she wants.
Derek stormed out of the room and into the living room where Mom and Dad were watching television. Auntie Pat and I followed.
Mom, do you have a heart condition?
You know I do. Where is this coming from?
Mom, if you've never been honest about anything else, please be honest now. Do you have a heart problem?
I chimed in. Auntie Pat said. Mom glared at her sister.
This is why you aren't invited over. You are always starting trouble. Telling the truth, you mean?
Auntie Pat asked before biting into the drumstick in her hand.
Just tell him the truth, Miriam.
What is she talking about, Miriam?
Dad asked, looking quite confused about the entire situation. Mom sighed.
Fine.
She stood up and looked at everyone.
I don't have heart complications. Is everyone happy now?
Mom threw her hands up in the air. I watched as the shock of what Mom had said turned to hurt on Dad's face.
So, what have you been taking all these years?
Vitamins.
Dad shook his head and turned towards the window.
I can't believe I pretended to be a perfect son. I guess we're a family of frauds.
Derek yelled. He told Mom and Dad about how he had dropped out of college, about his new job, how he and his girlfriend had eloped, and she was 4 months pregnant. Then he turned to me.
And you, my own sister, who I thought would have my back, blackmailed me. I am so done with this family. I don't want to see any of you again.
With that, Derek left and we never saw him again. The next few months, things got worse with Mom and Dad. When I finished high school, Dad left. Mom was devastated and went through a period of withdrawal, not talking and not eating. Even though I got into Penn State, I decided to go to a community college so I could look after Mom. I also took a job on afternoons and weekends to have some extra cash. After Dad left, I tried to contact Derek to apologize, but he refused my calls. I didn't have much of a social life in college, and one semester before exams, my friends insisted that I go to a party with them on my night off. I was reluctant to go because I wanted to spend the night with Mom, since she said she never sees me anymore and she feels trapped at home by herself. That night, I told Mom I had to work an extra shift. I felt bad lying to Mom, but I needed to de-stress. She said okay, went to her room, and locked the door. By the time my friends and I got to the club, The party was in full swing. I was having a great time and thanked my friends for dragging me out the house. That was until I saw her. The crowd was cheering and someone was dancing in the middle. My friends and I inched forward to see who the dancer was. My eyes widened when I realized it was my mother. "Mom!" I shouted as I spun her around to face me.
Hi, Keisha. I thought you were working tonight.
She fumbled. "I can't believe I've been feeling sorry for you all this time, and here you are living your best life. I'm so done with this." I stormed off and exited the club, Mom close on my heels.
Keisha, honey, wait, please.
I stopped and rolled my eyes before turning to face her. "What do you want, Mom? Are you going to tell me how sorry you are and that you need another chance?" "You're all out of chances, Mom. I'll be moving out tonight, and I'm going to live with Dad." I turned and walked away from Mom. I hope that one day she realizes that she has a problem and gets the help that she needs.
I threw my backpack over my shoulder as I said goodbye to my friends. Another great day at school. Now I just had to find my brother so we could go home. I was starving because I had given my lunch money to a kid who forgot his. I figured that act of kindness would feel much better than buying food for myself, and it sure was. I spotted my brother leaning against the car we shared. A cute girl approached him smiling, but he said something and she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I figured she mistook him for me. We're identical twins after all. Hey there, remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more. It only takes a second and we really appreciate it. As soon as we got home, I went to the kitchen to say hi to my parents, while my brother Evan went up to his room as always. It smells fantastic. Did you guys make pizza from scratch? I asked my mom as soon as the amazing aroma filled my nose. I hugged her and did my special handshake with my dad. I then set the table and called my brother down to come eat.
So, how was school? Levi? Evan?
My dad asked me and my brother. I started telling them about my classes that day, but my dad kept looking at Evan.
Evan, I asked you about your school day,
said my dad sternly.
"What are you nagging me for? That's supposed to be Mom's job,"
replied my brother. My dad instantly looked annoyed. Evan just knew how to push his buttons. They started shooting snarky remarks at each other until their voices got higher and they were full of arguing. I exchanged looks with my mom, who looked upset, as she always did when Dad and Evan argued, which was often.
"Why can't you be more like Levi?"
shouted my dad.
"What's your problem with me?"
Evan shouted back. My mom set her cup down roughly on the table, grabbing their attention. She looked annoyed too, but then she put on a sweet smile.
"Evan, when is your next swimming competition, darling?"
she asked. The atmosphere quickly changed. That was the one thing my parents didn't fight with Evan about. He's a fantastic swimmer. I was laying in bed later that evening when my parents came into my brother and I's room to say goodnight. My dad sat down next to Evan's bed and started asking him about his competition, which was in 2 days. They could talk about this for hours. "Hey Dad, I wanted to ask you about how you applied to college because," I began, but I was interrupted by my dad saying,
"I'll be right there, son. Give me a minute."
Then turning to talk to Evan again. I waited and waited for my dad to be done, but I eventually fell asleep waiting. This was normal. Their attention was always on me except for the days before Evan's competitions. I usually didn't care, but now I was flooded with college applications and I needed my parents for advice, now more than ever. The next day, I was getting tired of my parents giving me none of their time because they were so focused on Evan. I knew it wasn't his fault and that I'm old enough to know how to share, but I was getting annoyed at him. "This is only because of your competition, you know. That's the only reason they don't fight with you right now," I said to him when we were both in our room.
"You're jealous you're not their favorite son right now, aren't you?"
he asked with a smirk. I wanted to punch his stupid face, which unfortunately was my face too. "They'll forget about you after tomorrow," I snapped at Evan. He gave me a look of pure hatred. I had seen it before, usually when he fought with Mom and Dad and I diffused the situation perfectly. He envied me, I could tell. I went to the bathroom to get ready for bed, then came back to find everything normal, except one tiny thing stood out. The clothes I had left on my desk chair were gone. They were dirty though, since I had worn them all day, so I figured Mom took them to the laundry. I went to bed, not psyched for my brother's competition the next day. I was sitting in the damp bleachers of the pool next to my parents, who were both holding signs with my brother's name on them. Psh, what's 2 little signs compared to the dozens they've made for me throughout the years? The competition was supposed to begin 5 minutes ago, but nothing. Another 5 minutes passed and people were getting impatient. There was one swimmer missing, Evan's biggest rival. Suddenly we heard sirens and cops threw the doors open. I wondered who they were stalking towards, but soon enough they were forcing me to stand up and handcuffing me. They gave me the whole, "You have the right to remain silent" speech, but I barely heard it. I was nauseous. What the heck? What was I being arrested for? My parents looked like they had seen a ghost. My brother looked shocked, but slightly happy. I was just confused and honestly scared to death. They put me in an interrogation room where I waited for hours until a detective came in to talk to me. "What's happening? What am I arrested for?" I demanded to know, barely keeping my voice steady.
Where were you last night at 12:47, son?
The detective asked. I didn't like that he called me son. I told him I was at home sleeping at that time, and he shook his head. He told me it would be best for me to collaborate and tell the truth, which only confused me more. He took the laptop in front of him and turned it towards me. A video was playing security cam footage. I saw someone walk down a hotel hallway. Then I saw the guy standing in front of a door, and when it opened, the guy punched the man who opened the door straight in the face. The detective zoomed in on the assailant, and I recognized him. It was me, wearing the clothes I was wearing yesterday. It looked exactly like me. Was I tripping? Did I leave my house and knock some guy out?
Does that not look exactly like you, son?
Asked the detective. I nodded slightly. Who's the man in the hotel room? I asked.
You know very well who that is,
answered the detective. I took a closer look and my eyes widened. It was the missing swimmer. The missing swimmer had been found in his hotel room bathroom with a broken leg, unable to move. And according to security camera footage, it was me who attacked him. 4 hours later, my parents bailed me out. The swimmer was suing, so I'd have to go to court in a few days. I didn't do it, I swear. I was asleep at that time. I tried to explain, but they didn't believe me.
We raised you better than this, Levi. We never thought you'd be capable of such a monstrosity,
said my mom through tears. My dad hadn't spoken to me the entire car ride home. But those clothes, Mom, you took them to wash them much earlier that night, I responded.
I didn't take your clothes, Levi. Stop trying to make excuses. We saw that footage. Everybody did.
My mom sobbed. My head was spinning. How did I appear in that footage wearing clothes I had taken off much earlier? When we arrived home and I saw my brother, it clicked. The dangers of having an identical twin. Evan framed me. I was on trial for attacking a young athlete for apparently no reason, but the only thing I was thinking about was how my brother betrayed me in the worst way possible. It made perfect sense. He wanted me gone, and he wanted his competitor gone. Now I was going to prison, and the poor guy Evan attacked would likely never swim again. At least not nearly as well as before.
Levi Freeman, you are sentenced to life in prison for physically attacking the plaintiff and leaving him to suffer, which was an irredeemably inhumane act,
said the judge. She smacked her little hammer, and my fate was sealed. I felt very little. I didn't feel sad or scared or weak. All I felt was anger. I had been in prison for a week when I made the decision to take matters into my own hands. The case was closed, meaning no one would even question that I had attacked Evan's competitor. I didn't deserve life in prison. I was innocent. I knew perfectly well that I was, though my case was definitely insane. My identical twin brother put on my clothes and framed me for leaving a fellow human being to suffer for hours. I had to escape somehow. I quickly realized you can't actually file bars until you squeeze out of your little window. Why do movies teach us all these stupid ways to break out of jail? I was put on kitchen duty for a few days, and that's when I got an idea. The next week, I asked to be put on garbage duty, which was always available since no one liked doing it, and the guards didn't want someone doing it wrong and leaving trash everywhere. I picked up trash all day and filled up multiple huge bags. It was disgusting, but I needed this. Later that day, I had to take the trash to the big garbage containers, and today was pickup day. You can probably guess what my great escape plan was at this point. I needed to be far from the prison before they noticed I was gone, so a little unpleasant ride surrounded by putrid garbage was ideal. The truck picked up the whole container with me in it and dumped it in the back. I was lucky the truck driver had to pee real quick, which allowed me to attack him and steal his clothes. A handsome and young guy like me didn't have any trouble at all getting a ride into town, which is where the next phase of my plan began. Doing the garden work was usually my job at home, so since I was gone, the grass, bushes, and trees were overgrown. Do you know what this was great for? You got it right, stalking. Every night I watched my family. I expected to see arguments, screaming matches, and slamming doors like always. So tell me why I saw smiling faces. I saw Evan doing a cool handshake with my dad and setting the table. I saw them talking all lively and laughing together. My brother replaced me. I was furious. I sat outside my bedroom window and watched my traitor of a brother living happily, a constant smile on his face. I had to take a deep breath to stop myself from storming in and hurting him, hurting the face that framed me. But it was too soon. I had things planned for Evan. Soon enough, he wasn't smiling anymore. He was scared. I would stalk him all the time. He saw a figure outside his window at night, but when he opened the window, it disappeared. He heard voices in the vents and heated tapping on his window. I watched as he lost sleep and got more shaken up by the day. I was even bold enough to shut down the power whenever he was home alone. I would always open doors that he knew he had closed, and close doors he knew he had opened. I left food out on the counter after he had put it in the fridge. I was evil enough to leave chips and crackers in his bed, so when he sat on it, they crumbled. My time finally came when my parents were out of town for the weekend. Evan was so on edge, he flinched at the light tap of a branch on his window. So imagine how he screamed when he saw me sitting on the kitchen island in the dark. I had a knife in my hand and slowly moved towards him, weeks of anger visible in my eyes. Evan staggered backwards, shaking. "No hug hello for your brother?" I asked him sheepishly.
How did you escape?
He demanded. I simply smirked at him. "You framed me," I said. Evan stumbled and fell to the floor against a wall. I kneeled down to his level and said, "You stole my life." Evan started explaining why he did it. He said he was tired of being the black sheep, of me being Mr. Perfect, of Mom and Dad hating him. I'm not Mr. Perfect anymore. Mom and Dad don't want to see me ever again, but they do want to see you. I grabbed Evan's chin and said, "Luckily, we share a face." That night was the last time I saw my twin brother, when he scurried out of the house and promised to never come back. I went and changed into his clothes. I finally slept like a baby. I knew Evan was too much of a coward to come back. I guess I should call him Levi now, because now I'm Evan. Not like my parents will be able to tell the difference. They're kind of terrible. I think what I did was just. My brother stole my life, so I stole his in return. The only obstacle I have now is how the heck am I going to convince my parents to let me quit swimming?
Ooh, what on earth have you got on your feet? Those shoes are so nerdy.
At that moment, I really wished the ground would open up and swallow me. I was always getting picked on at school by the trendy kids. I couldn't help it that I loved studying and wanted to get the best grades I possibly could. You see, I wanted to be just like my dad. He's a very famous scientist. In fact, he was the man that invented the machine that can clone animals and even humans. One day, I would be a scientist too, and hopefully just as famous as my dad. Dad and I had a really special relationship because we both loved science. My brothers, Tom and Andrew, were more into sports, and my sister Amy wanted to be a fashion designer. I guess you could say I was Dad's favorite. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any more shocking stories. I walked past the group of kids that had teased me about my shoes and out of the school gate. I saw my sister waiting for me. "What's up, Neil?" she asked as she noticed my sad face. I shrugged my shoulders. "You know, the usual stuff," I said. "Everyone always teases me about the way I look and the clothes I wear." "Don't worry," she said. "I'm gonna help you do something about it. I'm going to give you a complete makeover." When we got home, Amy took me up to her room. "The first thing we're going to do is order you some new clothes." We sat together looking at all the online shops. Eventually, we had a whole new wardrobe chosen. The next thing she did was take me to a fancy men's hairdresser in town. I usually just let my mom cut my hair, so this was a whole new experience for me. I sat in the chair and the hairdresser handed me a bunch of magazines with hundreds of different hairstyles in it. I had no idea what would suit me, so I just told him to choose for me. I hardly recognized myself when I looked in the mirror. I looked like someone out of a boy band. I felt nervous walking into school the next morning. I was worried that people would laugh at me for trying to change my look, that they would still pick on me. But I had nothing to worry about at all. In fact, it was quite the opposite. I got compliments from everyone. Even the most popular kids told me I looked fantastic. Usually at lunchtime, I sat alone in the corner trying to avoid eye contact with everyone else. But now the kids asked me to join them on their table. Suddenly, I had become one of the popular kids. The girls laughed at my jokes and flirted with me. I couldn't believe how much things had changed. The only people who didn't seem happy with my transformation were my own brothers. They didn't like the fact that I was so popular now. Actually, I think they were jealous of me. "Oh, don't we think we're Mr. Popular now?" said Tom when he saw me sitting with a group of girls. I couldn't understand what his problem was. Tom and Andrew both had girlfriends, so that couldn't be the reason. There was only a year between the two of them, and they were really close. They both started dating at the same time, and the four of them went everywhere together. I just hoped that one day they would be happy for me. In the meantime, I was just enjoying being able to go to school and be happy. I was still doing well with my grades, but now that I looked trendy, nobody seemed to care that I was clever too. I felt like there was nothing that could ruin it for me, but I had no idea what was going to happen next. I could sense that something was wrong the minute I walked into my house. Tom was sitting slumped over the kitchen table with his head in his hands. Andrew had his arm around him. "What's the matter, Tom?" I asked. Tom didn't look up or answer me, and Andrew ignored me too. "His girlfriend has dumped him," Amy whispered in my ear. "Oh, Tom, I'm so sorry," I said. "Is there anything I can do?" "Yes, you can stay away from me," shouted Tom. I was shocked at the way he had spoken to me, but I put it down to him being upset. I felt sure that he didn't mean it. That night as I lay in bed, I could hear Tom sobbing in the next room. It broke my heart that he was feeling so sad, and there was nothing I could do about it. The next day at school, I saw Tom's now ex-girlfriend. She was talking to a group of her friends. She didn't look sad at all. She was laughing and looking like she didn't have a care in the world. As I got nearer to them, she looked at me. "Hi, Neil," she said, batting her eyelashes. If I didn't know better, I would have thought she was flirting with me. Surely she wouldn't do that, I thought. But it seemed like that was exactly what she was doing, because the next time I saw her, she came over to me and said, "Would you like to go on a date with me, Neil?" Of course I said no. I would never do that to one of my brothers, especially when I knew Tom was hurting so badly. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to ask me. Wait until I let Tom know exactly what kind of girl she was. Once he knew what she had done, I felt sure that he wouldn't be so brokenhearted. But I was wrong. I told Tom that she had asked me out, but instead of him saying what a terrible thing for her to do, he blamed me. "You were probably flirting with her all the time behind my back," he screamed at me. "No, I wasn't," I replied. "How could you even think that I would do something like that? Because you just want everyone to like you. I wish you would go back to being my nerdy brother again." Andrew took Tom's side. He didn't believe that I was the innocent party. After that, they didn't include me in anything they did. One Saturday night, I was sitting alone in my room playing on my computer when I heard the front door slam. I looked out of my bedroom window. Tom and Andrew were walking down the street together. They were all dressed up in their best clothes. I wondered where they were going. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. I picked it up and saw it was a message from Amy. "Where are you?" she had written. "At home. Why?" "Aren't you coming to the party?" "What party?" It turned out that one of the kids at school was having a huge birthday party at a fancy hotel in town. Everyone had been invited. My brothers had hidden my invitation and not told me anything about it. It was almost midnight when I heard them come home. They were laughing as they walked up the street to our house. I wanted to confront them, but I knew it would only make things worse. The best thing I could do was to pretend I wasn't bothered. Anyway, I had my own little secret too. I had started dating one of the prettiest girls in school. Her name was Lucy. She was in the same year as me. The first time I saw her, I fell in love. She had big blue eyes and long blonde curly hair. She was so cute and really funny too. We had been on a couple of dates already. I really wanted to ask her to be my girlfriend. I was meeting her Friday night. We were going to the movies and then for a pizza, so I decided that I would ask her then. Friday night came and I went into town. I felt really nervous. I really hoped that she would want to be exclusive with me. I stood outside the cinema. 10 minutes went by and she was nowhere to be seen. I kept on looking up and down the street, but there was no sign of her. I wondered where on earth she could be. Another 10 minutes went by and then another. Finally, I realized that she wasn't going to come. I felt so disappointed. I'd been looking forward to our date all week. When I got home, I called her, but she didn't answer her phone. The next morning, I tried to call her again, but she still didn't answer. I began to worry that something might have happened to her. I decided I would go to her house. When I got there, her brother answered the door. "Is Lucy here?" I asked him. "She doesn't want to see you," he said, "and you'd better stay away from her or you'll be getting trouble from me." "Why?" I asked. We were getting on so well. She knows all about you and Rachel. Tom and Andrew told her you've been two-timing her. That's not true. My brothers are just trying to ruin my life because they're jealous of me. But he didn't believe a word I said. He slammed the door in my face. I had no choice but to go back home. When I got there, I went upstairs and straight into my brother's room. Why did you tell Lucy I've been dating Rachel? I asked them. Now she never wants to see me again. They just looked at me and laughed. It seemed like they didn't care about my feelings at all. I went to my room and climbed into bed. I lay there wondering what I could do to get them to like me again, but I couldn't think of anything. Eventually, I dozed off to sleep. I woke up and looked around. Where am I? I thought. I wasn't in my bedroom. I was sitting on a chair and was tied down with chains. There was just a small window high up on one wall. I couldn't see anything except the sky. I had no idea how I had got there. Suddenly, the door opened. A boy about my age was standing in the doorway. I looked at him in shock. He looked exactly like me. It almost felt as though I was looking in a mirror. We were so alike. The next thing I saw were my two brothers, Tom and Andrew, standing beside the boy. "Help me," I shouted to them. "Someone has chained me to this chair." But they just laughed at me. "We're not going to help you," they laughed. "We're the ones who put you there." I looked at them in shock. "Why would you do something like that? And who is he?" I said, pointing at the boy. That's when they revealed exactly what they had done. They told me that I had ruined their lives and they hated me for it. So they had gone into Dad's laboratory and made a clone of me. But they had made the clone so he would be nerdy, not popular like me. "We kidnapped you and brought you here so you're out of our way," Andrew said. "We are going to replace you with the clone," said Tom. "You can't do that," I cried. "You can't leave me here." But they just walked out of the room, leaving me with the clone. There was nothing I could do. I knew that it was hopeless. I was going to be stuck in that room for the rest of my life. I stared at the clone for some time, and the clone stared back at me. It was crazy seeing the exact version of myself. He was dressed up, so he was a more nerdy version of me, like how I had looked before. I felt helpless. There was nothing I could do. But then the clone did something I wasn't expecting. He came over and started undoing the locks on my chains. "Come on, quick," he said. "I'm going to help you escape." I had no idea what we were going to do next, but I just followed the clone as he ran down the street. Eventually, we came to a park and sat on a bench. "We don't have much time," he said. "We need to come up with a plan, quickly." We sat together and thought about what we should do. Then it came to me. I would go back to my family and pretend that I was the clone. The clone was happy with my decision. He didn't want to be a nerd. He wanted to be a popular kid. We agreed that the clone would leave and explore the world. "I think I might go check out the Bahamas," he said. I smiled and wished him good luck. We waved goodbye and I set off back to my house. When I got there, Tom and Andrew were in the lounge watching a movie. "Do you want to watch the movie with us, Neil?" they asked, believing I was the clone. I was about to say yes, but then I remembered. No thanks. I want to go to my room and do some studying," I told them. Tom and Andrew smiled at each other. They were happy now that they thought they had got the old Neil back. I went back to wearing the old style and clothes that I used to wear. The kids at school began to tease me a bit, but it's not as bad as it used to be. I am now stuck having to pretend I'm this clone of myself. I don't know what to do. If I tell my parents, they'll no doubt tell my brothers, and then they might do something even worse to me. What should I do? Please help me out and leave your suggestions down in the comments below.
Mom, Dad, what do you do?
What do you mean, honey?
Like, everyone in my class? The other kids? Their parents have jobs. What are your jobs? And next week is career day? All the parents have to come in to talk. Mommy, can you come?
Yes, sure.
I was in the 2nd grade and I had absolutely no clue what my parents did for a living because they were home most of the time. We were rich though. We lived in a high-rise luxury apartment building in New York. Our building had a spa, gym, housekeeping staff, and a fancy restaurant where we ate every single day because my parents hated cooking. The view was fantastic. I could see Central Park from my room and I loved to stay up at night just looking at the nightlights in the distance. I'm sure you're wondering where all this money came from. Make sure you keep watching to find out. Anyway, my mom and dad did not come to career day. They told me I could stay home from school that day and they took me to the movies. Then we had ice cream after. I had so much fun I totally forgot all about school. Although we were pretty well off, my parents didn't spoil me. They wouldn't get me everything I asked for, and I still had chores to do in the house. I had to fold my own clothes, make my bed, and sweep the floor sometimes. What they did spend a lot of money on was my education. I went to a great school and my dad would always say,
Elvira, darling, you must study hard so you can earn an honest living. You'll be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. Study hard so you can achieve your dreams.
I was always confused when he said that, though. Was it possible to earn a dishonest living? And how did becoming a doctor, lawyer, or engineer become my dream? I wanted to be an astronaut or a zookeeper, but I was pretty young, so most things about life made no sense to me. Anyway, when I was 9 years old, my mom gave birth to my brother Parker. I was so happy because I finally had company at home. Being an only child gets frustrating sometimes because all you have to talk to are those two old people in your house. Also, my friends at school sucked. All they would do is show off their toys, and I had nothing much to show off because, like I mentioned before, my parents made a special effort not to spoil me. By the time my brother reached 5 years old, I started to realize that my parents were cyber criminals. This was how they made their money, and I'm not sure if they were scamming or stealing credit card information, but whatever it was, they surely did it well. One day, my dad left his home office open, and my brother went in and started clicking around on his computer. When my dad found him, he started screaming.
You know you're not supposed to be in here, Parker. What are you doing?
I was fixing this thing you did wrong, Dad. Look, I made you $2 million.
Stop kidding around. Wait. Oh my gosh. Wow, Parker, who taught you to do this?
No one?
He shrugged. Over time, my dad started leaving his office open on purpose. I don't know what Parker did, but my dad was beaming every time he went back to check his computer. It turned out that my brother had a strange talent, and he was able to acquire a lot of money in a short space of time.
Maybe we should let him stay home, you know? A boy with so much talent doesn't need to go to school.
You're probably right. We'll just keep him here from now on.
Are you nuts? How can he get to stay home but I have to go to school?
Hey, we've already told you it's not polite to eavesdrop on adult conversations. You have to go to school because you haven't made us any money. You don't have the same talent as your brothers, so you need to stay in school, get an education, and eventually get a boring, regular job like regular people.
I was so angry. The next day, my parents asked me to pack a bag. Where are we going?
On vacation.
I assumed they were just trying to make it up to me. I mean, a parent would feel guilty after saying so many harsh words to their child, don't you think? All four of us got on a first-class flight to Japan that evening. We stayed in a luxury hotel for a few days and I had a blast. I shared a room with Parker while my parents had their own room. I didn't suspect anything strange about the trip until I heard them talking in their room one night.
Do you think it's safe to go back home now?
Yes, the friction has died out. I don't think they're going to come for us anymore. Plus, I coaxed them with $3 million.
I opened the door and demanded to know what was going on.
Sweetheart, I've already told you it's rude to get involved in adult conversations. Anyway, you probably already know that we're cyber criminals. It's a safer form of crime, but we still face competition and, well, sometimes your competition becomes harsh and dangerous. We simply had to escape a dangerous situation for a while, but it's safe to go back now.
Are you confused? Because I sure was. We went back home the next day and my brother went straight back to work. I went back to school, unfortunately. I always tried to make friends, but I never really succeeded. The three most popular kids in my class, Pauline, Vanessa, and Tamara, always teased me for no reason.
How can you only have one pair of shoes? I'm sure you think you're cool because you live in that fancy building, but you're probably just a servant there. Where's your real family?
What? They are my real family.
So how come they don't buy you anything? You can't be our friend unless you have cool stuff like us.
I went home that day feeling more miserable than ever.
What's wrong, Elfie?
My brother asked while I was sitting on the couch about to scream into a cushion. You wouldn't understand. You don't even go to school, so how could you?
Well, is there any way I can help?
I don't think so. I screamed into the cushion, then looked at him carefully. Wait, I think maybe there is a way you can help.
How?
Can you hide some of that money you make for Mom and Dad? For me?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah? It's that simple?
Yes, they won't realize it anyway. I'll just transfer some of it into your bank account and you can go withdraw it whenever you want.
You're the best little brother in the universe. I squeezed him until he started hitting me because he couldn't breathe. By the next day, he had already transferred a few $1,000s to my account. I told my parents I'd be late after school because I had to work on a group project. Instead, I went to the mall and had my first shopping spree. First, I went to a high-end clothing store and bought a few trendy outfits. Then I went to a shoe store and bought about 5 pairs of shoes. After that, I went to the perfume store and bought the most expensive ones there. I made sure to pick up a cool toy for my brother before I left. When I got home, I threw everything on my bed and just stared. Finally, I had a chance to be recognized and accepted by the cool kids. Then I hid all the stuff so my parents wouldn't find it, and I gave my brother his toy. The next day, I went to school and I was dressed to kill. Everyone stared, and of course, Pauline, Vanessa, and Tamara had something to say. They asked me if I robbed a store. I just rolled my eyes at them. But 2 other girls from my class, Maria and Laura, decided to sit with me at lunchtime. They were always in my class, but they somehow decided they wanted to be my friends that day. I knew that it was only because of the way I was dressed, but I needed friends, so I let it happen.
You should hang out with us more often.
Okay, do you want to go shopping today?
Shopping. You got money?
Yes. I took them to the mall that afternoon and bought them anything they asked for. Then we pigged out on pizza and ice cream, and after that we went home. Parker, you're the best. My life is finally changing for the better. I hugged my little brother when I got home.
Anything for you, sis.
But I think I need some more stuff to make myself look cool.
What do you want?
Maybe the latest iPhone, a whole bunch of makeup, more designer clothes, and maybe a few cool things for my new friends.
Okay, I'll send some more money your way. Mom and Dad won't suspect a thing.
So with all the money Parker made for me, I was able to go from the class nobody to the girl everybody wanted to be friends with. In no time, there were 2 rival groups in my class. It was my crew with Maria and Laura versus Pauline, Vanessa, and Tamara. Because I had so much money now, I could buy lots of stuff to make myself and my friends look good. We had the latest everything, and my 2 new friends adored me. Slowly but surely, Pauline's group was losing popularity, and we were becoming the coolest one. Imagine that! Popularity! My life had changed so much that boys were actually asking me out now. Not just a boy, but boys. There are at least 5, but I chose Giovanni, a cute guy in my class from Italy. I liked him the most because every single day he'd leave a rose in my desk with a cute little note about how awesome he thought I was. Every day after shopping with my friends, we'd stroll around and hang out wherever we felt like. Ice cream parlors, the movies, the park. But things can't be great without getting totally crazy, can they? One night in the mall, just after Maria and Laura went home, I was waiting in the food court, looking around for Giovanni, who should have been there already. We were supposed to go roller skating. I started to lose my patience, so I got up to walk around for a while. I went to a toy store to look around to see if there was anything my brother would be interested in, when I felt someone grab both of my hands tightly. I turned around and there was a huge man dressed in black standing behind me.
Don't scream. Don't say a word. Follow me and everything will be fine. If you don't, I will hurt you.
I followed him to the back of a shoe store. There was a little room there. He pushed me inside and I looked around. There were other ugly, dangerous-looking men in there, and Giovanni was sitting on a chair in the corner. Giovanni, what's going on? They kidnapped you too?
No, don't worry. If your family complies, everything will be fine.
What are you talking about? An older man stood up and walked towards me.
Hi, I'm Luigi, Giovanni's dad. I'm the reason your family ran away to Japan a few months ago. Do you remember that?
Yes. I started trembling. I was really scared. What do you want with me?
Well, I need you to contact your parents and tell them my demands. Because of them, I lost a few $1 million from a company I was going to scam. They got to them before me. You're going to call them and explain that they must transfer $2 billion to my bank account.
Or else what?
Well, you can probably guess.
So Giovanni, none of this was real?
Sorry.
He shrugged. This was my first heartbreak. Luigi handed me a phone and I called my parents and explained my situation. They were terrified, but the transaction was done in 10 minutes. Luigi escorted me to the entrance of the shoe store, and I ran as quickly as I could. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Everything. This is the scariest thing that ever happened to me. When I left the mall, my parents were standing outside. My dad picked me up and hugged me, and I could see that my mom had been crying. I got into their car, and my brother was sitting in the back.
Hey, sis, don't be sad or scared. You're okay now. We're okay, too. It was a fake transaction. We didn't really send them $2 billion.
What?
I'm the smartest criminal alive.
Yes.
My dad replied.
But we're going to have to move far away, and for your own protection, we're going to send you to a boarding school in Canada. We'll have to change your name and maybe you'll have to dye your hair or something.
Dad, no! What?
It's for your own safety.
By the end of the night, we were all packed up, and by the next week, I was at my new school. It turns out that it wasn't as bad as I expected. For one, I was able to have a fresh start as a cool girl who had lots of money because Parker and I still had an arrangement. I just hope that my family will be safe and that I will get to see them again soon.
My childhood was very unconventional. You see, my dad is an eccentric scientist. He is always coming home with new inventions. You know, he even invented a pill to take instead of eating a meal. He gave it to Mom and me to try one time, but I didn't really like it, to be honest. Dad had his own laboratory in our house. I was never allowed to go in there. He would disappear in there for days sometimes. Even though my life wasn't as normal as other people's, I was really happy. Well, for most of the time I was happy. The only thing I didn't like was my brother's jealousy. They never used to be jealous, but when they went to summer camp and when they came back, it was like they were completely different people. Before I go on, stop right there. Have you subscribed to the channel yet? If you have, congratulations. If you haven't, what are you doing? Quick, hit that subscribe button now. And while you're at it, tap the notification bell too, so you don't miss out on any more shocking stories. I don't really remember my mom being pregnant. I suppose I was too young. I just remember the day she came home with my twin brothers. Dad had told me to stay home because he was going to pick Mom up. He told me that they had a surprise for me. When they arrived home, I saw Mom was holding 2 babies in her arms. Meet Liam and Lewis, Mom said to me. They are your new brothers. I was shocked, to say the least, but I loved my baby brothers. It was fun helping Mom to look after them. I used to read them stories and play peekaboo with them. I couldn't wait until they were old enough for us all to play properly together. As they got older, you could see they had a special bond. Well, I suppose all twins do. It was as if they knew what the other one was thinking. They would even finish off each other's sentences. It was weird how similar they were, but they never left me out. They always included me in everything they were doing. That's why I was a bit upset when Mom and Dad sent them off to summer camp. But why can't I go too? I asked Mom. Come on now, Lisa, said Mom. The boys just need to do something by themselves. Dad took the boys in the car and I stayed at home with Mom. I really missed them while they were away. The day they were due back, I stood at the window watching to see Dad's car. When he pulled into the driveway, I ran down to greet them. I ran to the boys and gave them a big hug. But Lewis just pushed me away. I was hurt at first, but smiled at them. I've missed you two so much. But neither of them looked that happy to see me. Oh, well, they're probably tired, I thought. But the next day, things weren't any better. They wouldn't let me play with them, and when I tried to go into their room, they pushed me back out. They didn't do it in front of Mom and Dad, though. They were their usual selves when my parents were around. Mom could tell I was sad, though. What's the matter, Lisa? She asked. Liam and Lewis won't let me play with them, I told her. I thought that Mom would tell the boys that they had to include me in their games. But instead of making them play with me, Mom did other things to cheer me up. One time she took me into town for a special lunch, just the 2 of us, and she bought me lots of presents. If I asked to go to the movies, she would take me. She wouldn't ask the boys to come, though. One time, I was in town with her and I saw some trainers that I really wanted. I knew they were too expensive, but I asked Mom if I could have them. Of course you can, darling, Mom said, and she bought them for me. When we got home, I went upstairs and showed Liam and Lewis my new trainers. Look what Mom bought for me, I said. They looked at the trainers. Of course she did, said Liam nastily. Yeah, you always get what you want and we get nothing, said Lewis. That's not true, I said. But later when we went downstairs, the twins asked Mom if they could have new trainers too. Oh, you don't need any, said Mom. Your trainers are still perfectly fine. The twins glared at me. I realized they were jealous of me. It wasn't my fault if Mom said they couldn't have them, I thought. We sat down at the kitchen table for dinner. Mom had made lasagna. It was my favorite. She put a plate of lasagna down in front of me, but when it came to Liam and Lewis, all they got was one of Dad's pills. Why aren't we having lasagna? They asked Mom. Oh, you know you two love Dad's pills, said Mom. I could feel Liam and Lewis's anger, but I didn't look at them. After that, things got even worse. Like the time I was walking to school and everyone was laughing and pointing at me. I wondered what was going on, but when I got to the school gates, I realized what it was all about. My brothers were giving out leaflets with a photograph of me on it. At the top it said, "Sister for sale, no longer wanted or needed." Why were they being so mean, I thought. I grabbed the leaflets out of their hands and threw them in the bin. "I hate you!" I shouted at them, but they just laughed at me. I didn't think it could get any worse than that, but I had no idea what was coming. The following weekend, it was my best friend's birthday party. I had been looking forward to it for ages. Mom had bought me a new dress to wear. It had been hanging on my bedroom door for weeks. I couldn't wait to put it on. After lunch, I went up to my room to get ready for the party, but when I got there, I couldn't find my dress. Where is it? I thought. I knew it was hanging here. Suddenly, I heard my brothers in the garden laughing. I looked out of the window. My face dropped in horror. My brothers had my dress and they had set it on fire. I ran down the stairs and out to the garden. "What are you doing?" I screamed. "You have ruined my dress!" "Oh, sorry," said Liam. "Mom asked us to burn the rubbish. We thought she meant this too." Maybe it's a simple mistake, I thought. I didn't want to get them into trouble, so I just went back upstairs and found another dress to wear. The following week, things weren't so bad. They didn't do anything else nasty to me, so maybe they weren't as jealous as I had thought. Friday night came, and as we always were having a takeaway for dinner, Mom ordered Chinese food, but once again, Liam and Lewis only got one of Dad's pills. I realized then that Mom and Dad didn't treat Lewis and Liam fairly. I don't blame them if they are jealous, I thought. That's when I decided I was going to do something special for them, to try and make up for them not being treated the same as me. After dinner, I went up to their room. "I've got a big surprise for you two," I said. "What is it?" they asked. "You'll see," I said. "Just be ready to go in the morning at 9 o'clock. The following morning, the three of us set off. I told Mom we were going to the park, but instead, I took them to the water park. They were so excited when we got there. Mom and Dad never let us go to the water park before, said Liam. We changed into our swimsuits and I dove into the water. Liam and Lewis looked a bit hesitant, but they jumped in after me. But something wasn't right. I looked at them both as they seemed to just freeze in the water. They weren't swimming. In fact, they both looked as though the water was hurting them. "Swim!" I shouted to them. But instead of swimming, they both started sinking. I knew that if I didn't do something quick, they would sink to the bottom of the pool. I pulled them both out of the water and laid them on the side of the pool. They weren't moving. I was panicking. I didn't know what had happened. I grabbed my phone from my bag and called Dad. "Dad, it's Liam and Lewis. They're not moving," I told him. "Where are you?" asked Dad. "We're at the water park," I said. "You're what?" screamed Dad. "Wait there. We will come." I never heard Dad raise his voice before. I'm going to be in big trouble, I thought. Mom and Dad came running over to where the twins were laid. They told me to go home and they would take care of everything. I didn't want to leave, but Dad looked so angry. I did what he told me. I got home and went to my room. I was so worried about my brothers. It was all my fault. I should have never taken them to the water park. I sat there for ages waiting. Where could they be? I thought. They must have gone to the hospital. That's when I heard the noise. Someone was in Dad's laboratory. Who can that be? I wondered. I went downstairs and listened outside the door. There was definitely someone inside. I knew that I wasn't supposed to go in there, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door and went inside. That's when I got the shock of my life. There were 2 beds in the room, and my brothers were laid on them. Except they didn't look like my brothers. Their arms and legs had been opened up, and I could see wires inside them and hanging out of their limbs. My dad was standing beside them. He was poking inside Liam's arm with some tweezers. "What's going on? What have you done to Lewis and Liam?" I shouted. Dad turned and looked at me in surprise. "Lisa, you shouldn't have come in here," he said. "You know you're not allowed." "I don't care," I shouted. "I want to know what's going on." Dad sighed. "You better sit down and let me explain." He sat me down and told me that my brothers were robots. He said that after he and Mom had me, they wanted more children, but weren't able to have any. So they decided that Dad would make 2 robots to be my twin brothers. Everything was fine until they had to go for their 10-year maintenance. He said, "We told you they were going to summer camp, but actually we sent them off to get some specialist maintenance." Dad then explained that something had gone wrong when they got their maintenance. Something had activated their emotions. They had never had feelings before. After they came back, they began to feel jealousy. I knew they had changed after the summer camp, I said. We tried to make it up to you, said Dad, but now I can see it only made things worse. They were jealous of you because you are a human being, just like us. How could you do that to me? I asked him. I thought I had 2 baby brothers, when actually all I've got is robots. I hate you. I never want to see you or Mom again. I ran out of the house. Dad shouted at me to come back, but I just ignored him. I ran out into the street. I had no idea where I was running to. I just kept on running. It was raining hard, and I jumped as I heard a crack of thunder and a flash of lightning. I was soaking wet, but I didn't stop running. Eventually, I came to the woods. I ran straight through them, but the ground was slippery because of the rain. I fell over and slipped down the embankment into the river. The water was high from the rain, and the current was strong. I struggled, but I couldn't get out of the river. The water dragged me downstream. I was terrified. As the river wound around a corner, I didn't see the big rock jutting out. As the water took me past, I banged my head against the rock. I was just about to pass out when suddenly I felt a hand reaching out to me. I grabbed hold of the hand as tightly as I could. The next thing I knew, I was being pulled out of the water onto the side of the river. I laid there gasping for air. I looked around to see who had saved me. It was Louis. He was holding his hand in pain from the water. What are you doing? I asked him. You could have short-circuited your hand from putting it into the water. I don't care, he shouted back at me. You're my sister and I love you. That was the moment I realized you don't need to have blood to be family. Louis put his arm around me and we walked back home. Mom and Dad were shocked when they saw us. I think it's probably a good thing that the boys have emotions, said Mom to Dad. If Louis hadn't felt love for Lisa, he would never have pulled her from the river.
For a guy in his late teens, I had a pretty boring life. I was the kind of loner kid who got bullied in school a lot. That meant I had very few friends, and having a girlfriend was just wishful thinking. I worked at a fast food drive-thru 4 days a week, and the rest of the weekend days I worked at my shipyard. I liked keeping myself busy like that, as work was my only escape from boredom. My coworkers often asked me, "Why do you work even on the weekends?" "What else would I do?" was my answer every other time. But before we move on, like this video, hit that subscribe button and activate the notification bell, and you will earn a fortune in the future. Trust me, it really works. Hence, it might not be that hard for you to get the idea that my social life was only limited to my workplace. No, I was not poor at all to work like that. In fact, when my parents had passed away in an accident a few years back, they had left all their fortune for me. So working was the only way to keep me busy and active. However, suddenly one day something happened that was very overwhelming for my slow life. I was just casually doing my work when 2 policemen barged into my workplace and arrested me. "Excuse me, sir, on what charges are you taking him?" my manager asked. The policeman murmured something which I didn't understand because it became so chaotic all of a sudden. I was puzzled, honestly, and had no idea what was going on. After that, the policemen put me in their car and took me to the station. When we reached it, they took me to the interrogation room and asked me to wait there, and then left. I kept on waiting as they had asked, but nobody showed up. Finally, after 1 hour of waiting, an interrogator entered the room. "Sorry to keep you waiting," she said as she came in. "No problem," I replied. Only then I found out that I was the chief suspect of a car theft case. Not only that, I was an exact match to the victim's and witness's description of the criminal. The interrogator showed me the sketch, and the resemblance was uncanny. "I don't know anything about this, officer," I told her, because at that point I was genuinely scared that they might convict me because of that sketch. So I needed to speak up. Then the interrogator went on and asked me about my whereabouts at the time of the crime. Luckily, at the time and day she mentioned, I had my shift at the fast food place. I was at the fast food drive-thru working my shift. "They have cameras everywhere, you can check it," I told her in a somewhat relaxed manner. I also told her that my coworkers could testify for me as my alibi. After getting my statement, she asked some police officers to check the facts. Soon they were back and had all the evidence to prove my innocence, so they let me go. However, the sketch had already done damage to my image. The image channel was shown under Wanted on every news channel on the TV, and thus had reached the public eye. That led to people staring at me weirdly as I walked by them. "I'm sorry, but you look like the car thief they showed on TV some days back," one of my customers said to me when I was serving him at the fast food place. To be honest, I was actually hurt by that statement, and the unwanted attention from the strangers was too much to take in. So I went to the police to ask them to clarify my case to the public as the situation was affecting me a lot. They agreed to make a public apology and called in some journalists and media persons for a media conference. We apologize for the hardships Mr. Gray Watson had to face in the recent days because of the sketch provided by us to the media. The features in the sketch might be similar to him, but all the evidence proves him innocent. We will also financially compensate him for his troubles, the chief of police said in the conference. The statement aired all over the media, from radio, television, to the internet. It was only after that things started looking good for me. There were no more gossips on the street about me. Customers were no longer staring at me like they had seen a ghost or questioning me. I was relieved that things went back to normal, but it was not for long. One day, while I was sitting at home, someone showed up at my door that I would never have expected to meet in a million years. It was someone who had exactly the same look as me in terms of our faces. So much so that when I first opened the door, I felt as if I were looking at a mirror. "Hey, I'm Sky," the person at my door said. I looked at him from head to toe and found some differences as well, like the tattoos on his hands, and his dressing was way different than mine. "I'm Gray, come on in," I said, and made way for him to enter. I was so shocked that I couldn't even think straight. After that, we went to the living room and talked more about ourselves, but the first thing was our birth dates. And guess what? You guessed it right. It was the same day and the same year. Even though we were only 18, it didn't take us long to realize that we were twin brothers. "We might have separated at birth because of some unfortunate event," I said, and he nodded his head in agreement. However, in my mind, I was just thinking about why my parents had never told me anything about this. But I brushed it off my head quickly and offered him to stay the night since it was getting late. He happily agreed to it. Then we got into more deeper and serious conversations. "I mostly lived on the streets. My childhood was not easy," he told me, and I felt bad that he had to live through such a rough childhood. "You know what, let's skip on all these tragic things and go see a basketball game tomorrow," I asked him, trying to make him feel better. He agreed, and we went to bed after that. The next day, we went to see the basketball game. I wanted to use that chance to bond with my twin brother. It was the first game I had ever been to, as I rarely went out other than for work. So we both enjoyed it a lot, at least for my part. On our way back home, I told him all about my life and schedule, basically what I did every day. "I thought you had a lot of friends," Sky said. "Oh, only at work," I told him. I also told him how after the incident of my parents, I had grown a phobia of getting into a car and driving. "I'm sorry to make you walk, but my driver's license is rotting somewhere in my drawer," I told him, and we both laughed. "No problem," he said, and soon we reached home. But when we did, suddenly his expression started to change. He was all jolly and fun just moments before, and suddenly, he was serious. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked him when we got into the house. "No, I'm not. I am your brother, and I need the fortune our parents left," he replied. Honestly, I was shocked at first, but given that he had a hard childhood and difficult early teens, I was okay with giving him half of the fortune. It was only fair. "No problem, I'll give you 50%, I said, and went for a fist bump, but he left me hanging there. "I need it all," he demanded in an angry tone. "You have enjoyed it all till this day, while I had nothing," he said, and kept on demanding all the money as if he wanted to start a fight. "Sky, you're crossing the line," I said, as I was honestly pissed. I mean, he was just a stranger a day before, and now he's demanding all the fortune. Not even half, but all. "You know what? Just get out of my house," I told him, as he was not backing off even when I warned him. After that, Sky's face turned red. He kicked the door and stormed out of the house like he was not the reason for our quarrel. I got a little sad about it because I genuinely wanted him in my life as a brother. But if fighting was his choice, I was okay with forgetting him like any other stranger. Then, from the next day, I went about my life as usual. I would go to work, do my shift, and walk back home. But at times, I felt like I was being followed. Once, when I was walking back home, I saw a shadow of a person following me, but when I turned back to see who it was, they hid quickly. At work, too, I felt like someone was observing all my actions. I was being stalked. It went on like that for about 2 weeks, and then it stopped. Since it didn't continue further, I stopped worrying about it. One day, I was walking back home late in the evening after my shift was done when I suddenly noticed something. I was passing by a television showroom display, and in one of those large televisions was a picture of me under Wanted. What on earth? I thought, and focused on the rest of the news. The news stated that the person in the photo was the most prominent thief who had been involved in a recent bank robbery case. And that wasn't all. The bank's security camera had also recorded video footage of someone that looked like me. Who other than Sky? And he was not even bothered, as if he wanted to be seen. Seeing all that, I immediately covered my face with the jacket I was wearing and made a run for home. After I reached home, I went straight to my computer to check the news further on the internet. And guess what? My face was all over it. I went to check the official FBI website, and there I was on the most wanted list with a $250,000 reward for information leading to my arrest. Now, you might think since it was my twin brother who committed the crimes, it would be his name there on the list. But no, there was my name in large bold letters, Gray Watson. It was because during the robbery, one of the robbers had dropped their driver's license, which was done intentionally by Sky, and the license had my information on it. It got me thinking about the time when I had told Sky about my driver's license being in the drawer. I quickly ran to check the drawer, and my worst nightmare came true. The license was not there anymore. Not only that, but at the time of the robbery, as mentioned in the news, I didn't have any shift and was home all the time, which meant I had no alibi. I started getting worried because I had no evidence to prove my innocence. Right then, suddenly my phone rang. It was a call from an unknown number. All shaking, I picked up my phone to answer. "Hello?" I said with a trembling voice. On the other side, someone was laughing like it was a supervillain from some movie. "How do you like your surprise?" he said. It was Sky. "You should have given me what I had asked instead of messing with me. Now you pay," he added. He had robbed the bank just to take revenge by framing me for his crime. But before I could say anything, he gave that villainous laugh once more and cut the call. He drowned me into this mess of quicksand, and now I'm on the FBI's most wanted list for the crime he committed. What should I do? Should I go and tell the FBI everything without any evidence? Or should I just pack my things and go into hiding? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on this channel.
I am the most annoying brother in the world. He literally ruined my life. It all started when I was planning my birthday party. I had been looking forward to my party for so long. Usually Mom just organized something for me, but this year she said I was old enough to do all the planning myself. I was sitting in my room writing my invitation list when I suddenly felt someone behind me. I turned around and there was my brother Adam, looking over my shoulder. I had just written down the name Jake on the list. "Oh, are you inviting a boy?" he teased. "Is Jake your crush?" I blushed and yelled, "Get out of my room!" "He is your crush, he is," he shouted. "I can see you're going red." He ran out of my room laughing. I scowled. Why did my brother have to be so annoying? Before I go on, stop right there. Have you subscribed to the channel yet? If you have, congratulations. If you haven't, what are you doing? Quick, hit that subscribe button now. And while you're at it, tap that notification bell too, or you'll end up with an annoying brother like mine. A week later was the day of my birthday party. I had spent all day getting everything ready. I wanted it to be perfect. The house was decorated and the food was all prepared. I was up in my room getting ready when I heard the first guest starting to arrive. I looked out of my window. My heart skipped. There was Jake walking towards my house. My tummy was full of butterflies as I went down to open the door. "Hi, Jake," I said shyly. Suddenly, my annoying brother jumped out from where he was hiding behind the door. He started singing, "Jake and Kelly sitting in a tree. K-I-S-S-I-N-G. Oh, are you talking to your crush, Kelly?" he asked. I was mortified. "Get out of here!" I screamed. "I hate you!" I ran up to my room. Tears filled my eyes as I sat on my bed, thinking about what just had happened. I was so embarrassed. I didn't want to face Jake after what Adam had said, but I couldn't stay in my bedroom all night. I wiped my tears away and went back downstairs to the party. Luckily, none of my other guests had witnessed my brother teasing me. I managed to avoid Jake for most of the evening, but I couldn't ignore him forever. I saw him sitting on the sofa and went over to speak to him. "Hi, Jake. Are you enjoying the party?" I asked him. He looked really uncomfortable. Yeah, it's great, thanks. Actually, I'm just going to go get a drink." With that, he almost ran to the kitchen. Oh my God, he couldn't wait to get away from me, I thought. This is all Adam's fault. He has ruined everything. Well, that's the final straw, little brother. I am going to get my revenge on you. After the last of the guests finally left my party, I went up to my room. I sat on my bed thinking about what I could do to get back at Adam for ruining my party. I started thinking about what he was really afraid of. Then it came to me. I remembered one time we had watched a horror movie together. Adam had been terrified. When it came time to go to bed that night, he was convinced there was a monster under his bed. It took Mom ages to persuade him that monsters aren't real. He would often have nightmares about it. Now I knew what I could do. I decided I would set up an audio speaker under Adam's bed. Then, in the middle of the night, I would make monster noises to frighten him. I laughed at the thought of him waking up scared. That will teach him, I thought. The first night, I put the speaker under the bed and I waited for Adam to fall asleep. I played the monster noises. It didn't take long before I heard Adam get up and run into Mom and Dad's room. "There is a monster under my bed," he cried to Mom. "Oh, not again, Adam," said Mom. "We talked about this before. We told you there are no such things as monsters." "But I heard it," he replied. Mom eventually convinced him that he had just been dreaming, and she took Adam back to bed. I laid in my bed giggling to myself. Oh, this is going to be fun, I thought. The next night, I did the same thing again, but this time I really ramped up the noises. Adam was screaming and crying out for Mom. That night, nothing Mom said could persuade him to go back to his room. The following morning, I woke up and went downstairs to get some breakfast. Adam was sitting at the kitchen table. He was shaking. "What's wrong with you?" I asked. "There's a monster under my bed," Adam replied. It took so much effort for me not to burst out laughing. I took a deep breath and pulled myself together. "What does it sound like?" I asked him. "Like a cross between a gorilla and a zombie," Adam explained. "I think I've heard of that," I said. "They call it gazombie." Adam looked at me petrified. "So it's a real thing?" he asked. "Oh, yes," I replied seriously. "I heard that if you get out of your bed, it will chase after you and eat you alive." I told him that I had read somewhere that the gazombie particularly liked eating little boys. They hid under their beds and waited until they were fast asleep before attacking them. The color drained from Adam's face. He looked terrified and started shaking even more. I couldn't wait for that night. This is going to be the worst night of Adam's life, I thought. I needed to get everything prepared. I told Mom that I wanted to go into town to meet my friends. But actually, I went to our local fancy dress shop. I told the assistant that I needed a costume that looked something like a cross between a gorilla and a zombie. She found me the perfect thing. After dinner, we always watched television together. But that night, I told my parents that I was feeling tired and wanted to go to bed early. I went up to my room, but instead of going straight to bed, I put on the costume and went and hid in Adam's wardrobe. I sat there for what seemed like ages before eventually I heard Adam getting into bed. I waited a bit longer to make sure he was definitely asleep, and then I took out my phone. I pressed a button and set the audio under his bed playing. I heard Adam scream, and that was my cue. I sprang out of the wardrobe and scared him. The color drained from Adam's face, and he bolted out of the room. He ran into Mom's bedroom screaming. I quickly ran to my room and got out of the costume. I jumped into my bed and pretended I was asleep. Finally, I have got my revenge, I thought. The next morning, I went downstairs. When I walked into the kitchen, Mom, Dad, and Adam were sitting at the table. Mom and Dad looked really worried. "What's the matter?" I asked. They told me that Adam hadn't spoken a single word since last night. I tried to talk to Adam, but he just looked at me and didn't respond at all. "I'm sure he'll be fine by tomorrow, Mom," I said. But the following day, he still wasn't speaking. It went on and on. Finally, he hadn't spoken for almost a week. Mom and Dad decided we should take him to see a doctor. The doctor did loads of tests on Adam, but everything came back normal. "Your son is absolutely fine," said the doctor. There is no medical reason why he can't speak. The only thing I can think is that he must have had some kind of trauma. Mom and Dad looked at me. Kelly, do you have any idea what this could be about? They asked. I felt so guilty. I realized it was my fault that my brother was mute. I didn't want my parents to know that I had caused the trauma. I panicked and said the first thing that came to my head. I think he's being bullied at school? They look at me in surprise. What? We had no idea, they said. Adam always seems so happy at school. Who is it that's been bullying him? I didn't know what to say. Then I remembered Adam mentioning a boy in his class. He wasn't a bully, but it was the first name that popped into my head. It's Sam, I said. Sam is the one that's been bullying Adam. I thought that would be the end of it, but Mom and Dad didn't want to let it go. They told me that they were going to go see the principal of the school about Sam. I suppose I should have told them the truth then, but I still thought that it would all blow over. The following day, Mom called the school and asked for a meeting with the principal. Mom and Dad went to see him that afternoon. What can I do for you? The principal asked as they went into his office. We want you to conduct an investigation into the bullying of our son, Dad said. The principal looked at Dad in surprise. Who do you think has been bullying Adam? He asked. Mom and Dad told him that they had found out that it was Sam that was the bully. They wanted the school to call Sam's parents, but the principal told them he had a better idea. I think you should invite Sam and his parents to dinner at your house, he said. That way you can get to the bottom of it. Mom and Dad thought that this was a good idea. So the following week, Mom called Sam's mom and invited them all to our house one Saturday evening. When Mom told me what they were doing, I was horrified. You must be at the dinner too, Kelly, said Mom. Why do I have to be there? Your brother needs all of us to support him. Oh no, what is going to happen? I thought worriedly to myself. Saturday night came and Sam and his parents arrived at our house. Mom told me to take them outside into the garden. We were going to have a barbecue as the weather was so lovely. Dad got Sam's parents a drink and they all sat around chatting as though nothing was wrong. Of course, Sam's parents had no idea why they had really been invited. Come and sit down now, said Mom as she put the food on the table. That's when Sam's mom noticed that Adam wasn't being his usual self. Why is Adam so quiet? She asked. Actually, that's why we invited you here, answered Mom. Sam has been bullying Adam so badly that the trauma caused Adam to become mute. What? Cried Sam's mom. No, I haven't, shouted Sam. He's my friend. I would never bully Adam. There must be some mistake. There is no way Sam would bully anyone, his mom said. Mom looked at Adam. Is it true, Adam? She asked. Has Sam been bullying you? Adam shook his head. Sam's parents looked at my mom and asked, who was it that said it was Sam? My parents looked at me. What should I do? At that moment, I knew I had only two options. I could either confess and tell them everything, or I could stay silent, and they would think I had told them the truth. I chose to stay silent. My mom turned on Sam's parents again. You're just defending your child. He is a bully, and we're not going to let him get away with it. That's when Sam's dad stood up. He looked angrily at my dad. Nobody is going to accuse my son of something he hasn't done, he said. Dad stood up facing him. I was so worried. I thought they were going to start fighting. You could feel the tension in the air. Then the most shocking thing happened. My mom picked up her glass of water and threw it in Sam's mom's face. I have never seen my mom do anything like that before. Oh my God, I thought in panic. This is getting out of hand. I knew that I had to do something to stop them. So I stood up and shouted, okay, I admit it, it was me. For a few seconds, everyone froze. Then they turned and looked at me. What do you mean it was you? Asked Mom. I told them all about Adam embarrassing me in front of Jake and ruining my birthday party. I just wanted to teach him a lesson, I said. I told them about how I had set up the audio equipment and pretended to be a monster. I'm so sorry, I cried. I feel terrible now. Adam can't speak, and it's all my fault. Suddenly, I heard a laugh coming from across the table. It was Adam. I pranked you, Adam said. We all looked at Adam. I had forgotten what his voice sounded like. What are you talking about? I asked. I knew it was you that was a monster, he went on. I felt my jaw drop. All this time, he had been faking it? He knew I was a monster? How did you know? I asked. I saw you coming out of the fancy dress shop with the costume, he said. I can't believe you, I said in disgust. All this time you have been pretending to be mute? I seriously have the worst brother in the world. So now I have to think of an even better way to get my revenge. If you guys have any suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below.
My brother Tom and I had always been close. We did everything together. Growing up, we were never apart. I couldn't imagine my life without him. I never thought I would one day have to choose between saving his life or my girlfriend's. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more crazy stories. We grew up in a small country town. There weren't many kids in our area. The local school only had 50 students. I think that's why my brother Tom and I spent all of our time together. We weren't just brothers, we were best friends. Tom was only 1 year older than me. He always took care of me. One time, we were playing by the creek when I tripped and fell into the water. Tom just jumped straight in after me and helped me get back out onto dry land. I knew that he would always be there for me no matter what. Mom would sometimes get annoyed that my room was all messy. She would say I had to stay home and clean it up. Tom would just look at me and say, "It's okay, I'll help you tidy up and then we can go out and play together." When Tom started school, I missed him. I would spend all day asking Mom if it was nearly time for Tom to come home. Mom would laugh at me and say, "Don't worry, it'll soon be time for you to go to school too." On my first day at school, I walked next to Tom excitedly. I wasn't nervous at all. Tom was going to look after me. He showed me which was my classroom and said he would wait for me at break time. We never fought or argued. My parents' friends thought it was so nice how well we got along. We both joined the school football team. I was so proud of Tom when he scored a goal. When I got the trophy for Player of the Year, Tom was the one shouting and cheering the loudest. I thought that we would always be close like this. I couldn't imagine anything or anyone coming between us. When we were in high school, we both started dating. We would tell each other which girls we liked. We would always try to help each other get the girl of our dreams. One Saturday in the middle of summer, we were both sitting in the garden enjoying the afternoon sunshine. We were looking forward to going out to a party that evening when suddenly I started to feel really sick. "I'm not feeling too good," I said to Tom. Tom looked at me concerned. "You don't look well," he said. He felt my head. "You have a fever, too." I went to lie down in my room. I told Tom he would have to go to the party alone. At first, Tom said that he would stay home with me, but I told him not to be silly. He should go and have fun. By the time Tom got home from the party, I was feeling a lot better. He came in smiling. He looked the happiest I'd seen him in a long time. "You look like you've had a good time," I said. "I met the girl of my dreams," he said. "That's brilliant," I told him. He went on to tell me that he had seen her from across the room. He hadn't actually spoken to her yet, but he said she was beautiful and he was going to ask her out on a date. I was so happy for him. The next day, I woke up and threw open the curtains. It was a lovely day, and I knew exactly what we could do. We should head down to the beach. I went down to the kitchen and found Mom sitting there eating breakfast. "Where's Tom?" I asked her. "Oh, he's not feeling well," she said. "I think he has the same thing you had yesterday." "He'll be fine," she said. "You go and spend the day with your friends." I got myself ready and set off to meet my friends at the beach. It was a really hot day, and I was looking forward to jumping in the ocean. I ran down onto the sand. I could see my friends already in the water. I took off my shirt and ran into the water. That's when I saw her. "Who is that?" I asked my friend Rob. "Her name is Sophie," said Rob. I went over to Sophie. I smiled at her and introduced myself. "Hi, I'm Andy," I said. "Hi, Andy," she said shyly. I thought I was in heaven. I had butterflies in my stomach and my heart was beating like mad. She was so cute. I didn't wait a moment longer. I asked her if she wanted to be my girlfriend. I couldn't believe it when she said yes. We spent the rest of the day by each other's side. When it came time to go home, I didn't want to leave her. "You must come back to my house. I want you to meet my brother," I said. When we arrived home, I took her into the lounge. "Wait here a moment," I said. I went to look for Tom. I found him sitting at his computer. "Come and meet my girlfriend," I said to him. Tom looked surprised, but followed me downstairs. As we walked into the room, I saw Tom's face change. Why was he looking so upset? "This is Sophie," I said. "I saw you at the party last night," said Tom. That's when I realized Sophie was the girl that Tom had fallen for the night before. But now she was dating me. I felt bad for Tom, but I liked Sophie too much to give her up. Tom stormed out of the house. After that, we never really spent much time together. I was always with Sophie, and Tom went out with his friends. I missed hanging out with Tom, but he couldn't forgive me for getting the girl of his dreams. I finished school and started working at a research laboratory. I loved my work. It was so interesting trying to find the cure for different illnesses. I came in from work one evening and put on the TV. The newscaster was telling the story of a new virus that was going around. It was deadly, and so far there was no cure. I was thinking about what I had heard when Mom came in and looked at me sadly. "Tom has got the virus," she said. My heart sunk. "I'm going to help find a cure," I said. I was just about to head back to the laboratory when my phone rang. It was Sophie's dad. "I have some bad news," he said. "Sophie has got the virus." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. First my brother and now my girlfriend. I knew it was down to me to find the cure. I rushed back to work. My colleagues were already there, looking into microscopes and testing different medicines. They shook their heads as I walked in. We spent all that night and all the following day testing and checking. We tried everything we could possibly think of. Nothing worked. We knew that time was running out for Tom and Sophie. "This is impossible," I said. "We're never going to find the cure in time." "There is one chance," said the laboratory manager. "The only cure for this virus is from a special crystal belonging to an old man in a remote village in China." I knew what I had to do. I volunteered to go to China. I would find the man that had the crystal and bring it back. I headed straight for the airport and took the next flight to China. When I arrived there, I was tired, but I wasn't going to stop for a rest. I jumped on a bus and took the long journey out to the village where the old man lived. As the bus wound its way through the narrow roads, I looked out of the window. Everything looked so different from home. I felt a little scared, but I had to go on. Eventually, the bus pulled up in a dusty marketplace. I got off the bus and looked around. I couldn't see anyone around. I went into the little shop on the corner. The shopkeeper couldn't speak English, but I had the old man's name written on a piece of paper. I showed it to her. She looked at me, nodding and pointing down the road. I walked in the direction she had shown me. When I got to the end of the road, I saw a little wooden hut. I knocked on the door. A few seconds later, the door opened and an old man stood in front of me. He only had a couple of teeth, and it looked like he couldn't see very well either. I showed him the piece of paper, and he smiled. "I need the crystal, sir," I said. He beckoned me into his home. I waited while he went through to the back room. When he came back, he was holding a small bottle containing the crystal. It was a shiny blue crystal and looked very strange. He handed it to me. This was it. This was the cure for the virus. This was going to save Tom and Sophie's lives. I put the bottle safely into my pocket. I thanked the old man and ran as fast as I could to the marketplace to catch the bus back to the airport. When I landed back home, I went straight from the airport to the hospital. By now, both Tom and Sophie were in intensive care. There was no time to waste. I found their doctor and told him I had the cure to save them. He looked at me and said, "So, who are you going to save?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "I want to save them both." "But this crystal contains enough medicine to save one person," he replied. "You will have to choose whether we save Tom or Sophie." I couldn't believe it. How can anyone choose between their brother and the love of their life? I tried to think what Tom would tell me to do. He would say, "Save Sophie," I thought. But then if I asked Sophie, what would she do? I could imagine her answer. "Save your brother," she would say. There was only one thing for it. I couldn't make this decision by myself. I would have to toss a coin and let fate decide for me. I took out a shiny silver coin from my pocket. I looked at it and said, "Heads, I save Tom. Tails, I save Sophie." My heart was beating like mad as I threw the coin into the air. It flew high up above me, spinning and turning before tumbling down towards me. I reached out to catch it on my hand, but instead I knocked it and sent it flying. The coin rolled across the floor and under a cupboard. I had to see what the coin had chosen. I lay down on the floor and tried to slide my hand under the cupboard. I could see the coin, but I couldn't reach it. I looked around the room for something to slide under the cupboard. In the corner was a broom. I grabbed the broom and was just about to slide it towards the coin when my telephone rang. The noise startled me at first. I reached for my phone. It was the laboratory manager calling. "Have you used the crystal yet?" he gasped. "No, I'm still trying to decide who to save," I replied. "Well, you won't have to," he said. He went on to tell me that while I was in China looking for the crystal, my colleagues were doing some more research. They had discovered that only half the amount of the crystal I had was enough to save one person. I jumped for joy. I had enough crystal here to save both Tom and Sophie. I ran to the doctor and told him the good news. "We can save both of them," I said happily. The doctor took the powder and instructed the nurses to give half to Tom and half to Sophie. I sat outside in the waiting room nervously, waiting for some news. It felt like I had sat there for hours when eventually the doctor came out. He looked at me smiling. "You can go and see your brother and girlfriend now," he said. "They are both cured." I went into the room and saw Tom and Sophie both sitting up in bed and chatting away. At that moment, I knew everything was going to be all right. If you've ever been annoyed by your older siblings, imagine having 5. Yes, 5. My name is Oliver, and I was born with 5 faces staring right at me, or at least that's what I was told. My sisters are identical quintuplets, and they're 4 years older than me. Before I continue my story, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you want to make sure you don't miss out on any great content, you can also hit that notification bell. I wasn't sure why my parents decided to have me after having 5 girls. After all, kids aren't cheap. But they sure made a fuss over me. They'd always wanted a boy, and they were happy when they finally got one. This didn't mean that everyone forgot about my sisters. I mean, quintuplets are quite rare, and my sisters are very charming. On the day of their birth, they were all over the news. The media made a huge fuss over them, and when they were finally taken home from the hospital, thousands of people had left gifts at our doorstep. The girls remained well known throughout our state and were always receiving offers to act in advertisements and sometimes even movies and sitcoms. Even when I was born, the news headline was, "Quintuplet sisters welcome baby brother to the world." It's always been all about them. But because I was the baby of the family, I was treated like a prince. In other words, my childhood was perfect. I got anything I asked for, and I never had to do any chores. While I was growing up, my sisters were also very nice to me. They had all rhyming names: Casey, Stacy, Jacy, Macy, and Lacey. And I'm not sure if this was my parents' idea of a practical joke. They dressed the same way and wanted to do everything together, so you can imagine that it was very easy to mix them up. To avoid any confusion, I just called all of them sis. I loved them, and I was pretty sure they loved me too. I always had someone to talk to, and I was never, ever lonely. This all began to change during our annual family vacation last year. We lived in a luxury high-rise apartment in the middle of the city. It was a concrete jungle there, so every vacation we'd go somewhere we could enjoy nature. My parents rented an amazing cabin in the mountains and planned a whole bunch of stuff for us to do. The one I was looking forward to the most was bungee jumping. We literally had to beg my parents to allow it, and they eventually agreed. I couldn't wait for that day. When the day finally arrived, my parents drove us to the location. I looked around and realized that the jump would be more thrilling than I expected. I could barely see the river below. That's how far up we were. 2 of my sisters went first. Then, when it was my turn, I got strapped up and took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3, inhale, exhale. Then, as I was about to jump, a huge man grabbed my arm so tightly I thought it would break right off. "Oh my gosh," he said. "Ouch, why did you grab me?" I said. "Your cord isn't attached, buddy. You should thank me for saving your life," he replied. I realized that I nearly jumped to my death. I didn't understand this at all because just a few seconds before jumping, I checked and everything was attached just fine. After that, I was too scared to jump and I didn't bother. When we got back to the cabin that night, I had a shower, and while walking to my room, I heard my sisters talking. "I can't believe you messed this up. You were supposed to prevent anyone from seeing that the cord was detached." "This isn't my fault." "Yes, it is." I wasn't sure who was saying what, but I was totally shocked. One of my sisters had detached my cord. Did they want me to die? But why? I went to my room and locked the door. I didn't know what to do or what to even think. I tried to avoid them for the rest of the trip. When we got back to our apartment, I thought I should talk to my parents about what happened. I barged into their room one night after dinner. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you about something serious," I said. "What's the matter?" my mom asked. "I think my sisters are trying to kill me," I responded. They looked at each other, shocked, then started laughing. "What on earth would make you think something so silly?" my dad asked. After I explained what happened, they tried to convince me that it was all in my imagination. Maybe I thought the cord had been attached and it hadn't. Maybe I was so shocked from the experience that I heard incorrectly when I was standing outside of my sister's room. That night, I began to consider that maybe my parents were right. But that didn't last very long. As I sat on my bed thinking, my stomach began hurting like crazy. It wasn't an ordinary stomachache. I felt like there were prickles lining my stomach, and that every time I breathed, they pushed into my skin a little deeper. That's the best way I can describe it. "Mom! Mom!" I screamed. My mom came to my room right away. "Mom, something is wrong. I'm in a lot of pain. Call an ambulance," I said. Then I blacked out. I don't remember anything that happened after that. I don't know how many hours later I woke up, but for a while I could hear everything that was going on around me. I tried really hard, but I couldn't open my eyes. "Do you think it was enough? Did you put the whole bottle like I told you?" "No, I only put half of it in his drink." "You were supposed to use the whole bottle." "Ugh, you messed up again. I don't think he will die." They were my sisters, and again, I didn't know who was saying what because I couldn't open my eyes. It was obvious that they poured a poisonous substance in my drink at dinner time. But why? When I was eventually able to open my eyes, they had all left and only my mom was there. She was sitting on a chair looking at her cell phone. "Mom, what's wrong with me?" I asked. "Oh, my baby, you're up. The doctor said it's severe food poisoning, but I don't understand. We all ate the same food and we're all fine," she said. "Mom, I think my sisters put something in my drink. I heard them talking about it earlier. They're trying to kill me," I said. There, honey. You couldn't have possibly heard that. You weren't even awake. You must have been dreaming," she replied. I tried to explain that even though I couldn't open my eyes, I was wide awake and I was sure about what I heard. She didn't care. When I was ready to be released from the hospital, I was extremely scared. I didn't want to go home because I didn't know what my sisters would have in store for me next. But I had no choice. I just had to try my best to avoid them. I'd often go to the roof of our apartment building because I loved the view and just staring at it helped me to forget all of my fears and negative thoughts. About a week passed and my sisters hadn't tried anything new. I was sitting enjoying the view on the roof one evening when all of my sisters appeared behind me. "We have him now," Stacy said. "Don't mess up this time," said Casey. "What's going on? I don't understand why you are all trying to kill me. I've been a good brother to you," I said while getting up and looking around for an escape. "You've been an annoying brat, and I think that Mom and Dad already have enough children. They don't need you as well. They never did. You were a mistake, and we're going to get rid of you," Stacy said. "This doesn't make any sense, Stacy. We're almost adults. In a few years, we won't even be living with Mom and Dad anymore. I don't think you need to kill me to get rid of me. After we leave home, I promise you'll never see me again. Just don't kill me, please," I pleaded. Stacy came towards me. I backed away slowly. "Please, stop," I said. "No, we are not messing up again this time," Stacy replied. "He's already on the edge of the building. Just push him off," Macy said. "Never mind. I will just save you the trouble and jump," I said. I pretended like I was going to jump. They were frozen in shock, and I used this to my advantage. I ran quickly towards the steps and shot down as quickly as I could. I don't know how I ran down so many flights of stairs. I guess fear has a way of making you more powerful than you ever thought you were. When I got downstairs, I ran outside and flagged a taxi. I asked the taxi driver to take me to the nearest police station. Then, I recorded a video with my phone explaining how my sisters had been trying to kill me for days and how my parents weren't taking me seriously. I uploaded this video to my social media and also sent it to a popular news company. If my parents wouldn't take me seriously, then the whole world would. When I got to the police station, I explained my problem to the police. Wait, you're the brother of those Quintuplet girls, a very pretty policewoman said. Yeah, they're the ones trying to kill me, I replied. OMG, can we take a selfie with you? Can we meet your sisters? She said. I was angry and baffled. They weren't taking me seriously at all. I stormed outside and sat on the steps. I felt hopeless. No one would listen to me, and I had nowhere to go. Suddenly, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I looked up and saw a kind-looking old man. Hey, kid, I heard your story inside. I believe you. Here's some money for a hotel. Don't go home tonight. It isn't safe, he said while handing me a few $100s. Wow, thank you so much. This will really help. But before I could finish, he had walked away. I knew that there was a cheap hotel around the corner, so I just walked there and checked myself in. When I got to my room, I locked the door. I sat on my bed and wondered what I should do next. That was when I remembered the video I posted. I got my phone out and saw that I had tons of messages from friends. OMG, Oliver, how could they do that to you? Wow, I had no idea you were going through so much. Ollie, you're on TV. I turned on the television and sure enough, I was right there. My video was playing and even the reporters looked shocked. They didn't have the same reaction as the police and it seemed like people were finally beginning to believe me. I smiled and suddenly my phone rang. Hello, is this Oliver? Please don't ask me how I got your number. My name is Robert Charles and I'm a scientist who specializes in cloning animals and humans. I'm sure this might come as a shock to you, but your sisters were not conceived naturally. Your mother's eggs were used, but after they were artificially inseminated, they were kept in a laboratory. Your mother pretended to be pregnant for 9 months and everyone believed she had given birth naturally, but that is a lie. In reality, you are their only real child, and I think this might be why your sisters are upset with you. They are jealous. Also, something may have gone wrong scientifically, which would explain your sister's new violent tendencies. For your sake, I have decided to go public with my research and the truth about this whole situation. Stay where you are until I do so, he said. My jaw dropped. On one hand, I was relieved to know why my sisters had changed all of a sudden. On the other hand, this was all way too spooky. I remained in my hotel room for a few days. Like he promised, the scientist went public with the truth. My sisters were taken to an institution so that they could be observed and studied for any abnormalities. My parents aren't too happy about it all, but at least I'm safe at home now.